Well, I mean, I don't know that there's a great gulf between where Pascal and I are on this. Insofar as I think what I hear Pascal saying is that race was invented, which you shouldn't use the passive voice, but human beings invented race to explain inequalities that are the product of social relations, but to do so in a way that naturalized them, to treat inequalities that are again the product of laws, customs, practices rooted in the exploitation of certain populations, blacks and American Indians, let's say in the colonial period, to treat those again expressions of exploitation as outgrowths of natural processes rather than what they really were, right? I mean that seems to be part of what you're saying, Pascal, that from the very beginning the point of race is to explain exploitation. And I might, if that's correct, I would even go so far as to say that that becomes a necessary project in the context of American liberalism, because the way that race functions practically is to explain why blacks, and we'll keep it on Black Americans, but a version of the same thing is going to apply to American Indians. The way that race functions historically, and that the point of its invention in the modern sense of it is to explain why blacks are exceptions to liberalism, because once you have the project that is American liberalism that presumes that all men are created equal, endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, you're going to have to explain, oh yeah, but not black people, right? You're going to have to explain, oh, not American Indians. So what you're really trying to explain vis-a-vis blacks is why not slaves. And in order to make the explanation for why not slaves, then what we get is the invention of race, which is going to then be the black person exception. So that jump off, I think, is the same for us, is it not, Pascal?
That's you have more eloquently explained my consternation at the ever attempt to explain, because frankly, talking about, whenever you talk to most liberal, most black people who are liberal Democrats, they are always saying, well, all the racism, look at all the racism. And I'm saying, listen, there's a certain point we're going to get to in America where these reactionary white people are not going to care about how much you call them a racist.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very transparent. As a matter of fact, they're halfway there now. They're pretty much there already.
Yeah, half might be too conservative.
Yeah, it might be too conservative.
Three
What
quarters.
happens when that? What happens when that happens? Then, Pascal.
Well, that's my point. If we don't have better policy arguments as to why there needs to be remedies for the social shortcomings of poor and working class people who are disproportionately black and brown, then we're going to get stuck with absolutely nothing but omnibus crime bill 2.0, 3.0, 4.0.
We're seeing it right now from the state level, right? We're definitely seeing a rollback of all the, I don't know if advances is the right word, but some of the bills that try to change the trajectory of mass incarceration, especially that we get, I guess you can say post 2018, when there's this new wave, blue wave, we'll call it, of more liberal district attorneys that are literally running on things like, I want to have no cash bail. And now we're back to lock them up from long periods of time.
Well, all of what you are saying is addressing a theory I've had for quite a little bit, that the worst thing for racism that for black people race wise in America was the Obama presidency. It was a complete catastrophe. It completely made every aspect of the racial discourse in America worse. First of all, number one, the whole notion of a post-racial America was a cruel con game. It was absolute, because it wasn't post-racial, and surely wasn't post-racist. It was actually more racial. We talked about race more after Obama than the 10 years before him.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, to your point, Pascal, just to amplify it, I've long, and I do this in chapter 4 of Toward Freedom for what it's worth, but I've long insisted on referring to Obama's post-racial presidency as the post-racism presidency, because much of his rhetoric on race called on Black Americans to stop complaining about racism or anything on the spectrum of structural sources of inequality, and instead to look within, right? To do the things that we can do ourselves to improve the race's lot. And he would, no question about it, make the occasional reference to redlining. But if you were to go through some of those speeches, you might find one line reference to redlining, followed by 24 lines of references to why Black men need to do better. And so the brilliance of his speeches, on some level, at least one element of what was allegedly brilliant about his speeches, is you could hear whatever you wanted to hear in an Obama speech. Frankly, I think that's true of a speech by President Trump. Totally different style, right? I mean, President Obama's going for smooth and Ivy League educated professor. Whereas, oh, forgot the ears, my bad. But President Trump, by contrast, has more of a kind of shock jock persona. But in both instances, I mean, they're kind of all over the map, with Trump's version being improv, of course, and Obama's being very well crafted and elegant. Nevertheless, this is what we had in the Obama framing, right? Stop complaining about racism, Black Americans, and start focusing on what you can do and for yourselves. And just to further amplify the point, Pascal, in 2008, I mean, two things that I regularly said at the start of the Obama presidency, certainly after he won, were: one, am I the only Black American white collar professional who works with a bunch of disingenuous white liberals, or knows a bunch of disingenuous white liberals who are voting for Obama to make plain that affirmative action has run its course? Because I heard that from colleagues, right? I mean, it for some people I knew in, white collar professional land, for some white Americans I knew in white collar professional land, that was part of the appeal of Obama. He could speak frankly to Black people about how they needed to take personal responsibility. But again, his success and the foe up from the underclass backstory of his had, for some of these people, made plain that affirmative action had run its course. So that was a horrifying reality of the Obama presidency, or at least his candidacy and then presidency, which I think is one of the things that you're talking about. And the other thing, because I'd known a lot of people who were, in America's heartland, who were were definitely Republicans and probably kind of racist, if not very, who were interested in Obama, from the conversations I had had with them, because was such a disaster. Bush 2 was such a disaster. And in the context of the economic collapse, the obvious reality that Sarah Palin maybe wasn't up to the job at hand made them question the value of casting a vote for the Republican at that time in 2008. But that these people who I knew, crossed paths with or whatever, again, white conservatives, probably racist, I would be willing to put money on it, were interested in Obama, oddly, because they imagined that he would do something in the vein of what Bernie Sanders had advocated. And believe me, nobody would have said that in 2008, because most people weren't thinking about Bernie Sanders. But there was a presumption on the part of many that Obama, and was it Time magazine, that on the cover of Time there was a cartoon depiction of Obama where he looks like Franklin Roosevelt or something like that, and maybe it said we're all socialists now or something. There was reason to believe, if you listen to Obama's speeches, and optimistically, that he might take a more interventionist role in support of the American working people. And my fear was that, as I put it then, was that since those people I referenced were attracted to Obama for the reasons that I said, if he just proved to be Black, or dare I say mocha Bill Clinton, then the Republicans would likely, I said, run a right-wing populist in 2012 or 2016. And it's not that I'm Afro-Damas or Negro-Damas, if we want to go with the classic. It's that's essentially what happened from Carter to Reagan. And that's essentially what happened from Clinton to W. And in each expression of the the conservative candidate who was tapping into resentment, they got less and less polished, is I think the easy way to put that, because the feelings are more and more raw. And you wanted a candidate who could address the resentments that weren't all misplaced. Some were, or I should say, the resentments, the frustrations and anxieties were appropriate. The resentments were misplaced because we have tended to hate on the people, our neighbors, and the people below us rather than punching up. But it was pretty evident that the playbook that conservatives have used has tended to center on nurturing these resentments and channeling anxieties across and down the ladder rather than up.